Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Borechem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Mihi Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. And we welcome Shabbat with light, with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. It's my pleasure to call upon Emma Weisenbluth to lead us in one of the readings and to light the Shabbat lights for us.
Please starting at the bottom of page 21. To light candles in all the world, that is Shabbat.
Light Shabbat candles is solely pregnant with potential into a splendid sea, in it the mystery of the fire of sunset.
Lighting the candles transforms our room into a river of light. My heart sets in an endless waterfall. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו בהדרכי Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו Page 24, Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Avarachon, Yedid Nefesh Avarachon, Meshochatecha, El Ritzoncha, Meshochatecha, Yalel Ritzoncha. Yarutz Avecha Kemoya, Yishtachaveh Hadarecha. Yarutz Avecha Kemoya, Yishtachaveh Please join me responsively at the bottom of page 25, the words of Psalm 98. Sing a new song to Adonai, sing to Adonai all the earth. Let the earth ring out in song to God. Sing to Adonai a new song. Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and all its creatures. Let the trees of the forest sing for joy. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai a new song. Let the rivers clap hands. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Break forth, sing aloud, shout praise. On page 29, the words of L'Chadodi, we welcome the Shabbat as we sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. That's our minhag, it's our custom here. And we rise for the last verse as we symbolically usher in the Shabbat bride. L'Chadodi likrat kol ha'bnei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kol ha'bnei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kol b'nei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kol b'nei Shabbat nekabla. Shamor zachor b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu Eloheinu echad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'lithiva. L'Chadodi, l'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikadem nesucha, sof ba'aseh machshavat chiva. L'Chadodi, l'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. Hitoreri, hitoreri, hibarechu yori, ori, ori, shir daveri, kevod Adonai alayich nikra. L'Chadodi, l'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. L'Chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabla. Take a few moments now to think about the meaning of Shabbat. Shabbat is a day of rest. It's a day of holiness. It's a day on which we try to focus on what is most important. What is most important in our lives? All the busyness of the week that we don't have or don't make the time to focus on what's the essence for us. And on Shabbat, we do what happened on the day that the days that the world was created, on the day that the divine creator of all beings in the world did. We take a break. We rest. We are Shabbat v'yinafash. We are rested. V'yinafash. We are re-ensouled. We are refreshed. And as we do so, welcoming Shabbat, we breathe in a neshama amukah, a deep breath, a deep soul. Tradition tells us that on Shabbat we gain a little bit of an extra soul, that extra Shabbat soul that stays with us throughout the day of Shabbat, the 25 hours. And then, at the end of Shabbat, as we say goodbye with Havdalah, we wait with longing for it to return in the week to come. So now we turn to page 36. We take our Shabbat selves. We rise in our spirits or in our bodies. We turn in the direction of Yerushalayim, and we pray these words, saying, Baruch Hu, we praise. Pray the words of Ma'ariv Arabim, the prayer for creation in the evening, on page 37. Frank, would you lead us at the bottom of page 37?
Okay. One of all the words, I will submit to the art of your sight, and I will make you to the heavens. You are the creator of the universe, the last of the effort to see the overwhelming divine. Our mightiest telescope stands in the corner of it. The rays of light that reaches the distant galaxies began to travel long before we came to be. Founded from first creation, the earth delivered was glorified yesterday, and we made our appearance on it only a moment ago.
When we consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what is humanity that you are mindful of us? What are we mortals that you consider us? Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Arabim. We praise you, Eternal One, who loves your people Israel, as together we rise for the words of Shema, the words that follow, the words of Ve'ahavta. We open our ears to hear, and we open our minds and our hearts to let the words fall in. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch She'elot She'echol Malchuto, Le'olam Ha'ed. Baruch She'elot She'echol Malchuto, Le'olam Ha'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meitecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzvocha hayom alecha. V'shiratam levanecha v'dibartam v'shitecha v'avintecha u'lechtecha b'derech u'shovbecha u'v'necha u'shartam le'odai yadecha ve'ayut atavot b'necha u'v'kaltam al mezuzot beitecha u'nisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Please be seated. Bill, would you lead us on 42 at the top of the page?
All this we hold to be true and certain. The Eternal alone is our God. There is none else, and we are Israel, God's people.
Our divine protector delivers us from the hands of human oppressors and saves us from the fist of tyrants.
You perform wonders without number, marvels that surpass our understanding.
Lead us toward life and revive us when we stumble.
You did wonders for us in Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh.
You led your people Israel out forever to serve you in freedom.
When your children beheld your power, they praised you and gave you thanks. Freely they accepted your sovereignty, and Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you with great joy.
We sing those same words, the words that our ancestors sang at the shore of Freedom Sea. Mi chamocha, who is like you, Adonai? Page 44. We're approaching that season of freedom. In just a week, it will be Pesach. As you redeemed Israel and saved us from arms stronger than our own, so may you redeem all those who are still oppressed and persecuted. We praise you, Eternal One, the Redeemer of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Cause us, O God, to lie down in peace and to raise us up to renewed life and strength. Page 45 for the Hebrew. We continue responsibly on the bottom of page 47. Ruth, would you lead us there?
Why can we say, our God, the God of our ancestors? There are two sorts of believers, one of whom faith has been handed down from our ancestors. The other has arrived at faith through searching and contemplation.
In the first instance, faith cannot be shaken, no matter how many objections are raised to it. But there is a flaw in this. Faith is passed on from generation to generation as part of our tradition, and so it may have been learned without thought or reasoning.
The advantage of the second is that faith is reached through its own power, through much searching and thinking. But this faith also has a flaw. It is possible to shake it by offering contrary evidence.
But the one who combines both kinds of faith is invulnerable. That is why we say our God, because of our searching, and the God of our ancestors, because of our tradition. Yikadol v'yikadash shmei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchutei, v'chai echon u'biyom echon, u'chai echon beit Yisrael, We rise for the words of the Amidah, page 50. Adonai, Sivatai Titahu, V'yani Tilatecha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohe Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Ha'ador, Ha'gibor, Ha'nora, El Elyon, Lomel Chasadim Tovim, V'panei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Ha'od V'yol, U'levi Geulah B'Bnehem, L'Man Shmo V'Yam, Melech Hoseh Moshiach Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Ezra Sarah, atah Gibor Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol atah, Baruch Moshiach, Mechayeh Hakayim Chesed, Mechayeh Hakol Rachamim Rabim, Solel Noflim, Rofeh Olim, Umatir Asurim, Ukayenu Natol Yishadei Afar, Michamot V'Gvurot, U'Midot Elon, Melech B'Bitul Chayei, U'Matiach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atah Yachayot Hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei Hakol. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like the softness of moonlight, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Top of page 53, Kiddushat Hayom, the prayer, the holiness of the day. Those who keep Shabbat and call it a delight shall rejoice, and indeed we do rejoice on Shabbat. Which leads us to the words of Avodah. The words of Avodah. Asking God to listen to our prayers. Joel, would you lead us on page 59?
Jerusalem from Mount Scopus, and she was perfect and whole, little yet limitless, neither borders contained, and yet unconfusible.
Eastward the hills of Judah, wrapped in white and blue, are ministering priests, and silently they meditate blessing and burn the snail shell incense.
On the hills of the pits, the embers still whisper and burn, as if spice were being perfumed there with the twilight, or the roasting of the sun's coals, the censers and shadows.
And all Jerusalem was for me, like a single coal kept on the altar, that each nation and guardian might come, and brighten with tongs, and take from it an ember. Baruch atah Adonai, hamachazir shechinata l'Tzion. We praise you, Eternal One, who brings your Shekhinah to Zion. The words of Hoda'ah on the Shabbat, we give thanks as we sing the words of Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Adonai Eloheinu. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Adonai. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Eloheinu. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Adonai. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Eloheinu. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Adonai. Page 62. Radiant is the world's soul, full of splendor and beauty, full of life, of souls hidden, of treasures of the Holy Spirit, of fountains of strength, of greatness and beauty. Proudly I ascend towards the heights of the world's soul that gives life to the universe. How majestic the vision. Come enjoy, come find peace. Embrace delight, taste and see that God is good. Why spend your substance on what does not nourish, and your labor on what cannot satisfy? Listen to me and you will enjoy what is good and find delight in what is truly precious. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. Ki atom le'chalom, le'chol ha'shalom. Ki atom le'chalom, le'chol ha'shalom. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael. Le'choleinu v'oshem yishloch lecha. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Hamcha, Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. We take a few moments now to pray the words of our own hearts. say shalom v'rama. Oya ase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol bnei Adam. Oh, say shalom v'rama. Oya ase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol bnei Adam. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Well, friends, we're here on Shabbat HaGadol. Gadol means great, big. This is the big Shabbat, the great one. It's always the Shabbat before Pesach, before Passover. And it is mainly named, not just because it's the Shabbat before Pesach, but because the penultimate verse of the Haftarah that we'll read tomorrow morning on Shabbat morning from the book of Malachi says, "Behold, I send to you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of God." The great and awesome day. So this book of Malachi from which the Haftarah is taken, Malachi is the last of the prophets, it's unique because it's written in the form of a dialogue. God says, and then you say, and Malachi repeats the people's responses all the time, answering back to God's complaints. And in these conversations, in this dialogue, God is very patient and repeats the people's words instead of a monologue. It's a discussion, a dialogue, and in some ways it's also an argument. And not many human parents have the same kind of patience with their children's arguing, responding to words such as, "How have you loved us?" In this Haftarah, it seems that God is doing God's best to contain the argument. And the interesting thing about this is the Haftarah, the last Haftarah that we read from the prophets before the Seder, it teaches us, in a way, how to respond to children's questions, repeating the words before we respond to them. Because already, when the Israelites were leaving Egypt, God promised, or perhaps warned, said there's going to come a time when your children won't take anything for granted. They're going to ask you, what is this? What is this service about? What does this service mean to you? And we can think about that in the context of the Haggadah that we read at the Seder. Now, when the Talmud asks a question for which there is no satisfactory answer evident, it uses a word called teku. Teku is not actually a word, it's an abbreviation. But it's a way of indicating that we'll have to wait for the coming of Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu the prophet, to receive the correct answer. It says when Elijah comes, Elijah will resolve our questions and our difficulties. In modern Hebrew today, that same word or abbreviation, teku, refers to a tie in a sporting match. And in some ways, That's kind of what's going on here. But many of us are more familiar with it as that term that describes the unresolved Talmudic dispute. There is a very popular etymology for that term. The abbreviation or the acronym is Tishbi Eliyahu Hanavi will answer those challenges and those problems. Teshev Yitretz Kushiot Vayot. It's an interesting idea, but it's a relatively late midrashic teaching. The word actually comes from the Aramaic, tekun, which means it will stand. It's not going to be resolved. So a question is raised. Why are we bringing our questions to Eliyahu? Why don't we bring our questions, for instance, to Moses? Moses, who was said to be the greatest and ultimate teacher of Torah. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev answered this question by saying that when Moses died, Moses ascended to heaven and has remained there all this time. But according to legend, when Elijah the prophet ascended to heaven, he still managed to stay in touch with humanity. In fact, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, will be with us next week at our Passover Seder. Eliyahu is present at the naming of every new child, the Brit Milah ceremony. Elijah turns up to help the poor and the needy of every generation. And so Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said, while Moses is history, in a sense, Eliyahu is still here. Eliyahu remains closely involved with us. So we bring those questions to him and not to Moses because he's still in touch. We're still connected. Again, that's a bit of a drash, a bit of a midrash. But in the Haftarah for Shabbat HaGadol, Prophet Malachi tells us that God will send us Elijah the prophet, and that Elijah will help to turn the hearts of the parents to the children and the heart of the children to the parents. In other words, Elijah is going to bridge that gap that we sometimes have. We know that as a generation gap in modern times, but there's a gap in traditions. There's a gap in history. Parents and children in that generation gap, they're not communicating with each other in a meaningful way. And when we think of that, we generally imagine it to refer to the rebellion of children from the traditions of their parents, that they feel alienated from the old ways, they want to break out their own. But Elijah sees this problem differently. He says, first, I will work on turning the hearts of parents towards their children. Maybe that alienation that the older generation isn't listening to the younger generation is important. And we know that as adults. Parents might be too busy with work or too busy with their own obligations. They don't listen perhaps to the kids. Children see their parents say one thing but do something else. And so perhaps Elijah is saying, if I work on the parents first, if I turn their hearts towards the children, if I reconnect them, afterwards we can work on the kids and maybe turn their hearts back to their parents. What is it that we ask of young people in our Jewish community, the first ritual act that we ask them to do? Many of us might remember, as the youngest one at the Seder, your job as a young person is to ask the 4 questions. And those 4 questions aren't simply specific questions, but they're also to teach something. And that teaching is that asking questions is a Jewish religious mandate. Not all religious traditions tell us to ask questions. Some tell us don't ask questions. But in Judaism, that is probably the most important mandate that we've got. In fact, each of the 4 children, they ask questions, except for the one that is she'enu yodea lishol, a child who doesn't know enough to even formulate a question. And for most of us, that's probably the one that's the hardest to imagine. The tradition asks the youngest person to ask these questions that are specific and focused on ritual, but in some ways, it's not just about that. They're meant to be a place saver in case a young person isn't able to ask their own big questions yet about what's happening in the world. What's the meaning of this? Why do we do these rituals? What's the meaning of our tradition? And at the end of the Seder, there is also another moment for the youngest child to go and open the door for you-know-who, Elijah the prophet. Remember, historically, in the early part of our evolution of observing Pesach, the door was opened at the beginning of the Seder. Why? Because you invite people. Let all who are hungry come and eat. It's better to do that with an open door and to go out and actually announce it. Is there anybody that doesn't have a place to go? You'll come by me for Seder, right? But what happened? Well, as Jews, we have lived in threatening and menacing places. And so it evolved that we no longer opened that door at the beginning because it was too risky to say, come look, we're having Seder, look at what we're doing. And we moved the end of that open door ritual to the end of the Seder. And we asked the youngest person to open the door. Why do we ask the youngest person to open the door for Elijah? Is it a way to keep them awake and paying attention till the end? Maybe. Might be a good strategy to keep them engaged. But I think there's a more profound reason. And that is that it's a moment where only a young person has that feeling of hope and possibility that maybe we don't have anymore as adults. So when they open the door for Elijah the prophet, they open their hearts to the possibility that actually Elijah might actually come in and be there. The rest of us, maybe we've grown a bit hardened over the years. We imagine there's not a chance in the world that Elijah is going to be there when they open the door. And Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah, is the one who in our tradition is going to herald a time of harmony, a time of peace, a time of justice, and a time of hope. And so whether Eliyahu is there when that youngest person opens the door, we can, in a sense, ready the world for Elijah. We can, through our acts, make the world more just and more compassionate and more peaceful and more whole. And so as we are celebrating Shabbat HaGadol this week, and as we prepare to celebrate the festival of Passover, let us call to mind the image of Elijah the prophet and that ongoing significance, reminding us how vital it is for our traditions to stay in touch with our realities, for parents to stay in touch with their children, for children to turn their hearts back to the tradition of the older generations. And next week, both when we sit down and when we rise from the Seder table, may we realize and believe that the world is still there for us to shape and refine and to redeem. And may we believe that we can see Eliyahu and sense his presence. And in that, we find a little piece of hope and redemption in this holy but broken world. Shabbat Shalom. We take a few moments now to pray the words of the Mishaberach prayer, asking God for healing, for those in need of healing of body and healing of spirit. On page 133, on the Shabbat, we are thinking in our community of Shirley Herman, Esther Wuttenmark, Rick Valentine, Simon Green, Marlene Friedman, Suzanne Shear-Stimson, Raina Rowan, Gilon Naruzzi, Madeline Kitson, Kathy Kitson, Sharon Burr, Dee Hickey, Lorraine DaCosta, Jack Richmond, Nettie Sandalavici, Adela Tsur, Al Lofsky, Michael Freeman, Ann Steinbach, Erwin Milgram, Evelyn Tyndall, Amanda Schenk, and Harav Ilana Miriam Barchava. I invite you to share other names for people that you are praying for on this Shabbat, or to hold those names in your heart. We pray that God will grant them comfort and strength. May the source us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishabeiro, Imortenu, Mekora Bracha, Lavotenu, bless those in need of healing, with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We turn now to page 149 as we rise for the words of Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, l'ateit d'Eloi asher b'reshit, asher sam chelkeinu yached et shemo, v'gor aleinu l'amlik malchuto, v'anachnu kodim, u'mishtachavim u'madim, lifnei Melech Malchei Elohim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Please be seated. Page 158. You are with us in our prayer, in our love, in our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble and pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance, and let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. At this time, our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those of our friends and neighbors, and all those people whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We are in Shloshim at this time for Daryl Kruger, the brother of Adam, and the brother-in-law of Crystal, the uncle of Ephraim, Harmony, and Zane, and for Jerry Willis, husband of the late Nancy, stepfather of Jim, and stepfather-in-law of Patty Bamford and David Cummins, brother of Emily, grandfather and great-grandfather. We recall as well all those who lost their lives tragically in the terrorism incidents in Israel during the past 2 weeks. We also recall those whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of whose death, occurs this week. Winifred Desjardins, the mother of Jerry Kugelmass, Harvey Hudis, the father of Elliot, Emil Schmelars, the father of Eleanor Stock, the husband of the late Chaya, the grandfather of Marnie, Ilana, and Shari. Rosalind Ricky Schaffer, the sister-in-law of Gary Dvorkin, and Francoise Andrianov, and the aunt of Joshua and Jeremy and Liza Dvorkin. Jenny Pratt, the mother of Arlene Botnick and Lorraine Chelsky, the grandmother of Ian, Robin, Mark, Julia, and Karen. Monty Grossman, the father of David. Martha Ruth Lyons, the mother of Sandra Levy. Jack Wright, the grandfather of Rachel. Winnie Norton, the mother of Dennis Norton and Susan Dean Norton, and the grandmother of Jordan. Maurice Grant, the father of Jeanette Foyer, the grandfather of Daniel, Aaron, and Rachel. Emery Fakit, the husband of Margaret Dutton. Sharon Subeck, mother of Phil, grandmother of Seth, Gil, and Rachel, my mother-in-law. Charles Benson, the father of Aubrey. Esther Assenheim, the mother-in-law of Ruth. Zena Roberts, the great-aunt of Judith Reveg. Claire Kahn Rotter, the mother of Miriam, the grandmother of Daniel and Sophie. Seymour Rotter, the uncle of Miriam Kahn. Jerry Phillipson, the brother of Diane Adler. Minnie Guerra, the mother of Murray, the grandmother of Tina, and the great-grandmother of Jack. And Goldie Lipschitz, the grandmother of John Marlowe. Please share names of those for whom you are saying Kaddish this Shabbat, or hold those names in your heart as we ask the mourners to please rise first. We say to you, Min hamakom tinachamu, may you find comfort in God's sheltering presence, as now we rise as a community to support all of those who are mourning and to say Kaddish for those who have no one to say it for them. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon, v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalah v'yisman kar'i v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavarach, le'alam ala me'almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitdormam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudusha barechu, le'elam yimchol birchata v'shirata, shishbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabim shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom in Ramav, v'yasei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to those who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved among us, among all the people of Israel, and among all the nations and families of earth. And we sing together, Amen. Please be seated. Announcements of the Shabbat will be shared by Joel Brown, followed by Kiddush, also led by Joel Brown.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to begin by thanking our shamas tonight, Isaac Wong-Ken, and our live streaming volunteer, Emma Weisenbluth. Thank you for your service to us tonight. So, some upcoming services. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. is a family service, so please join us. It's pizza and prayer. Is that how we're going to do?
I think we're having the prayer first and the pizza second.
You know, that way, not too thirsty to pray, so that's good. And next Friday, of course, is First Seder, so we will not be here. So you're welcome to come, but the doors will be locked and the lights will be off. So, but the following Saturday, of course, we will be back, and 10 a.m. Saturday service. So please join us for that. Some other upcoming events. Let's see. Oh, okay. And before I get to the upcoming events, I see there's something highlighted here about Beit Sefer. So there's no school this Sunday and Tuesday, but next week, the Passover weekend, or for the Passover weekend, but April 7th, oh gosh. All right, help me out here. When's
I
school
think
on?
there is school this weekend.
School this weekend,
but
not
then
next
the weekend of
weekend,
Pesach.
then back after that.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense. And of course, your adult text study will be on this Sunday, this week, Third Commandment. Looking forward to that. Our conversation with our Israeli friends, cross-congregational reading group, has been postponed to Monday, May 9th. And there are many, many other announcements, things going on. I'm trying to see if there's anything coming up this week. Nothing immediately. You'll be able to read about it in your shamas email which for technical reasons has been delayed this week. The service that we use to send that out is having a moment this week, and we hope to have that out in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that, and you can check our website as well. Shabbat Shalom.
Please rise and join with Joel for Kiddush for Erev Shabbat. If you're at home, please raise your glass.
Vayir Vayivocher Yom HaShishi. Now the whole universe, sky, earth, and all their array was completed. With the seventh day, God had ended the work of creation and rested with all work completed. Then God blessed the seventh day and called it holy, for with this day God had completed the work of creation. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Orei peri hagafen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher tishanu b'mitzvotav v'yatzah b'anu, v'sha'ar kosho v'yahavu ratzon v'kiranu, zikaron ma'aseh b'reishit. Yom Tedion Levi Kodesh Zecher Tzion B'Mitzrayim Yonu B'Charta Yatanu Hirashta B'Kol Olim V'Shabbat Kodesh V'Yakav U'Rotzah
We wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to those of you at home as well. Those of you that are here, please come join us for some morning Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.